Hey, what's up, everybody? Chicago Gooner here, bringing another Arsenal talk. In this Arsenal talk, I will cover just about one thing and one thing only that I've been thinking about over the last about a day, day and a half, especially coming out of the aftermath of the Hull City game. A lot of things were said, a lot of things were said about the players, especially about Arsene Wenger, and that's who I am going to talk about in this Arsenal talk. Of course, after the aftermath, um, a lot of questions were asked of Arsene Wenger, especially even by the media, by the fans. Of course, the hashtag Wenger out started all over again. There was plenty of tweets saying, let's force him out, let's make him resign. I hope this is his last year. The old man has passed it, on and on. Um, and it even fell over into today. Here in the States, I listen to Sirius XM, and they have their own football channel where it's dedicated all to football, and they air games. They have Talk Sport on there for some of the hours. They have several different of their own radio programming for here in the States, of talking about like the MLS and all the top leagues and national teams and players and such. And one of the first questions that was asked during this radio show was, is it time for Arsene Wenger to move on? And it really had me thinking for the last, even before listening to this radio show, that I was kind of surprised even this radio show was asking the same things. Of course, a lot of their stuff comes from talking to other colleagues and other people in the sport, whether you're a radio announcer or if you're you cover games and you're a commentator in games and whatnot. But of course, the main focus was, is it time for him to move on? Is it time for him to resign? And the thing I've been having trouble with is, who do we replace him with? In this day and age, it's easy for fans in this day and age to think that it's easy to find another Arsene Wenger type manager, that it's another Arsene Wenger type manager is just hanging out on the corner, waiting for a team to pay him the money to become the new Arsenal manager. Of course, this day and age, with likes of video games such as FIFA. Of course, the most popular one is, of course, Football Manager. Of course, in those games, you can buy anybody who you want. I mean, you can create the ultimate dream team. Of course, in FIFA, you can create the ultimate team. You can have any manager you want. Even if you play career mode, you can, you're the manager, obviously, but then, you can move on to different clubs if you want to. You can retire or move on to a national team if you want to. So I guess in this day and age, it's so much easier for people to easily think about and just say, yep, let's just make him resign. Let's force him out of the club. Let's fire him. The one thing I want to get off right away is, anybody who thinks that Arsenal is going to fire him, you're just out of your mind. That it's not going to happen ever. If you go back all the way to when Arsene Wenger first came to the club up until now, he's revolutionized, he's modernized the club. He's made what the club is today, as far as being a powerhouse, a money powerhouse. Also, as far as worth goes, I think they're 12th or 13th in the world as far as professional teams, professional franchises to own. I think in U.S. dollars, I think it was something about like 1.3 million. I think they're worth right now. Currently, Arsenal is. But of course, what they're worth and what someone would buy them for, I'm sure if Stan Kroenke sold it today, he could probably get about $2 billion out of it easily. Someone would probably buy it for. But considering what Arsene Wenger has gone through, especially at like these last about like 8 or 9 years, of what he's had to have to do. Not too many other managers would have done what he did over the last 8 or 9 years, and staying loyal to the club and staying here when he had so many more opportunities to go and and, and manage teams like a PSG where he would have an unlimited checkbook. He can go and go with the French national team. He had plenty of opportunities to do that. I believe even Manchester City offered him a job as well. All the big clubs were coming after him because they thought that Arsenal was going to fold at some point and that he did want to leave, but he stayed here. Of course, during that time, he kept us in top four. He kept us in Champions League. He kept us competitive towards the odd years that we were actually competing for the league. But of course, he stayed, and the limited transfer budget that he had to work with, and you would say about like 5 or 6 years there, that he had somewhere around like $20 million basically was his, or 20 million pounds was basically like his transfer kitty that he had to work with. So he basically had to sell players off to buy other players and to bring other players into the club. So everything that he's had to do, and the things that he had to do, and the things that he had to sacrifice, and to keep us in top four, and to keep us in to where we are today. I mean, other clubs like Manchester City, Chelsea, even Manchester United at some points were copying everything that Arsene Wenger was doing here at Arsenal when he came in, when he modernized the club, when he changed the diets of the players, when he changed the players' lifestyle, also the training ground, the pitches itself from Highbury to even the Emirates today. He revolutionized the whole thing. He modernized the whole thing. And to think that Arsenal or Stan Kroenke or even Ivan Gazidis, obviously Stan Kroenke would have the final say, but there's no way in hell that he will ever be fired from Arsenal, ever, because you could say in a way that Arsene Wenger has become somewhat of a yes man in a way, to where he's going to appease the owner, even the Arsenal board, before he's going to try to appease the fans. Of course, as fans, we've been screaming for, a proper DM, a world-class striker. Where's the replacements for certain players that we just haven't seen over the last several years? But for what he had to do through all those years and to keep us competitive, to keep us in top four, even up until today, winning the FA Cup last season, there's just no fucking way that Arsenal is going to fire him or even force him out. I do believe that this is his last contract. After the 3 years are up, I think this is when he's going to say, enough's enough. Arsenal will possibly give him a office job, being a consultant of some sorts, kind of like what Fergie is to Manchester United. Maybe even a managing director, possibly, where he's behind the scenes rather than in front. Who knows what the future holds, which scares the shit out of me. It really does. Because, like I said, in this day and age, it's so easy for us fans, especially in sport, any type of sport, whether it's American football or basketball or baseball or hockey or anything, or any of the top sports that produces a much that type of money year in and year out. It's easier for us as fans to say, yeah, get him out, get this player out, get this manager out, bring some new blood in, bring this player in, bring that, take this player out, bring in this player instead. It's easy for us to say that type of stuff. Sometimes our emotions get the better of us sometimes, especially after this Hull City game. I mean, for all Saturday and even Sunday, I was thinking, how the fuck did we get a draw out of that when we should have won it easily? Of course, the referee came into play a ton. The referee came into play just about in every single Premier League game this weekend. It was a disaster for the referees this past weekend. especially in the Arsenal game, which that first goal should have never been allowed. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. But after the aftermath of the game, it was just like fans were slating players. They were slating, of course, Arsene Wenger. All that the hashtag Wenger out. Let's force him out. Let's get him to resign. But what does the future hold? Have you really thought about that? Who's going to come in? How many Arsene Wengers are there actually in the world? You could probably count on one hand of how many, like, I guess you can say, world class type of managers that are actually out there. And some of them are into their, like, national teams, I guess you can say, too, in a way. But there's only a handful of them out there. There's not many of them out there. But for some reason, some Arsenal fans think there's another Arsene Wenger right around the corner when it's just not true. And when you really think about it, when you really take a step back and kind of calm yourself and really think about the future and think about what the future actually holds, I don't know about anybody else, but it scares the shit out of me because I don't know what the future holds. There was an article last year with an interview with Ivan Gazidis where they said Arsenal right now is preparing for Arsene Wenger to leave the club. Not at this very moment, obviously, but in the years to come, whether it's after his contract is up, which is in basically a little over 2.5 years from now. That Arsenal is preparing for when he does leave. And supposedly from another news article saying that Steve Bold is the heir apparent to Arsene Wenger. That once Arsene Wenger hangs it up and he retires, that Steve Bold is going to be the next manager of Arsenal, which scares the shit out of me because I don't know what Steve Bold actually brings to the club, even now. When he came into the club as an assistant manager, there was a lot of talk that he was going to fix our defensive woes, that he was going to make us better defensively, that we were going to be more stout, that we were going to be able to really compete against top 4 teams, that we weren't going to be conceding so many like weird, shitty goals every single game, and that's just not the case. The only thing I know about Steve Bold, because he hardly ever does interviews, and when he does interviews, it's like one-word answers, basically, kind of. So I don't know what he actually brings to the club, because if it's supposed to be defensive to fix our defensive woes, he didn't do shit last year, because against all the top 4 teams, we got our asses kicked all last year. So what does he actually bring to the club? What can he, the only thing that I know that he does, he sits next to Arsene Wenger on match days, and he wears shorts a lot. Other than that, and he's a former player. That's it. That's all I know about Steve Bold. Other than that, I don't know what he brings tactically. I don't know what he brings as a manager. I don't know what he does on the training ground. Because there's other articles even from last year that says that Steve Bold and Arsene Wenger don't see eye to eye. They don't get along all that well. So is that really going to be our heir apparent? That Arsene Wenger right now is tutoring him through the daily workload of being a manager of Arsenal? Because I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want to see Steve Bold as the next manager of Arsenal because honestly, I don't know what he brings. I don't know what he's good at. Is he a good motivator? Can he at halftime can he spark a fire under people's asses? Because like I said, the only thing I see him doing is sitting next to Arsene Wenger during games and talking to him. That's it. Other than that, I know nothing about Steve Bold as a manager. I don't know his positives. I don't know his negatives. But so far, his negatives outweigh his positives because I don't know what his positives are. Because if his positives was supposed to be fixing our defensive woes, well, he failed at that last year because it didn't fix. Yeah, of course, we played a lot better against, bottom half teams and teams that sometimes we would struggle against for some odd reason, especially away from home. But in the grand scheme of things, it was a failure because we got our asses kicked against top four teams last year. When we went up against Chelsea and Man City and Liverpool and even Bayern Munich, Bayern Munich pretty much took us to the ringer, both those times. So I don't know exactly what he brings to the club. Is it so that, because the transition period, regardless of what you think, is going to be tough. Because these are some of the things I don't think that people even really contemplate before they say, well, let's get Wenger out. Because who's really out there that we can get right now? A lot of people are saying, let's go get Klopp from Dortmund. Okay, that would be great. But does he want to leave Dortmund? Because he seems like he's pretty happy there. He seems like he really wants to build Dortmund back into a powerhouse. Not that they are a powerhouse right now, but they're not exactly Bayern Munich. Okay, everybody right now is playing second, third, fourth fiddle to Bayern Munich currently. Dortmund, of course, they don't have the financial power that Bayern Munich has, or even maybe even an Arsenal. But they spend their money wisely. But at the same time, does Klopp want to stay there? Does he want to does he want to move on to even a bigger club where he's going to have more opportunities of spending money to the players who he really wants, to get world-class players, and to not lose his world-class players like Lewandowski or Götze from the year prior? Because right now that would be the only option out there currently that would make any sense. Everything else wouldn't make any sense. I mean, then you're talking about managers who are currently at clubs that they're doing perfectly fine at, and they have no reason to leave. So people thinking that another Arsene Wenger is right around the corner is just nonsense. It's silly. It's silly to think that. Like I said, I know people's emotions kind of get the best of them, especially after a tough loss or a tough draw, especially something after like this Hull City game. But it's something that you have to really think about. What's the end game? I mean, what's really going to happen after Arsene Wenger does leave? Is it going to take for him to leave for people to actually appreciate what he's actually done here? I know, I guess to play kind of like devil's advocate or something, Arsene Wenger isn't the same manager Arsene Wenger was in his first 8 years. That much is obvious. How can I say this? In his first 8 years, he kind of had that killer instinct. You could take even this past weekend's game with Hull City. They went up 2-1 in the 47th minute. The old Arsene Wenger of the first 8 years, he would have had a winger and a striker up off the bench immediately coming into the game. Or he would have two wingers coming into the game. He would have at least one or two attackers coming in the game immediately after the other team went up 2-1 to try to get back the equalizer and then try to go after the win. We haven't really seen that out of Arsene Wenger over the last 3-4 years. The Arsene Wenger now is almost like a let's grind it out. Let's grind out victories. Let's grind out those 1-0s. Let's grind out the 2-0s, 2-1s, even. To where we lack that killer instinct. And it starts with the manager. It starts with his vision. And it ends with his vision. It transfers over to the players. There's a couple players that kind of have that killer instinct, that have that work rate and that desire. Currently, that's Alexis Sanchez and even Danny Welbeck. There's a lot of times where those guys are running after defenders and you know, they're running after defenders. All of a sudden, the ball gets passed over, and they're looking behind their shoulder, and no one else is there, and they're holding up their hands like, "What? Where's everybody else? Where's our help?" And that's where we lack that killer instinct. That's where when we're so short defensively, sometimes having that high pressure defense helps out the lack of defending that we do have. And I think this is where a lot of people are saying, Arsene has lost it. It's time for him to move on. I can see that point. I can understand that point because, it's pretty obvious that he has lost that kind of killer instinct to where when he went through his last, say, 8 or 9 years, it's the same with everybody else. Think about your life. Think about your life, especially during the weekdays. If you're kind of like older, if you're in, if you're out of college and you're kind of in the real world, you have a job and maybe you have like a significant other and something. You wake up in the morning, you have something to eat, you go to work, you come home from work, you have something to eat, you spend some time with your significant other, maybe you watch some television, maybe you play some video games or something like that, and then you go to bed. You're kind of repeating the same thing, Monday through Friday. Of course, your weekends are probably a lot different because you have a lot more free time. But when you're doing the same thing almost every single day, you kind of you're kind of setting yourself up to being doing the same thing over and over and over again, to where that's what Arsene Wenger had to do through like 8 or 9 years. He didn't have a transfer budget to work with. He couldn't buy any world-class players. He had to sell players off just to buy players. He had to let players go because they wanted out, because we couldn't buy anybody. He couldn't really offer any kind of wages to anybody that they wanted. We couldn't offer £200,000 a week. We couldn't even offer £100,000 a week to some players that deserved that type of money. So when you get caught up when you're doing the same exact thing over and over again, sometimes it gets so complacent that you forget about who you used to be and what it took to win league titles, to win FA Cups, to be competitive in Champions League. So is this where Arsene Wenger is now, that he got so complacent that he just forgot how to do everything else, or how to have that killer instinct to motivate his players, to set his players up to perform at their best, to get the best out of them? Because that's who Arsene Wenger used to be too. I mean, the saying is at Arsenal, we don't buy world-class players, we make world-class players. I think some of that has been lost over the years. And the stress that Arsene Wenger has been going under. I mean, no other manager would have stuck around like he did throughout all those years. And then when you're thinking about this future, saying, yeah, let's get him out. Are you really thinking about the future? Because it scares the shit out of me. I don't know about anybody else, because I don't know what's going to happen. I saw, we all saw what happened to Manchester United last year. And like I'm saying, with the Steve Bold being the heir apparent, yeah, it's great you're trying to set up somebody and you're showing them the day-to-day type of things of what you're doing day to day, and to make the club run, and to get the players on training on time, and to the games on time, and everything like that, and the transfer market, and everything that goes into being a football manager these days. But David Moyes was handpicked by Fergie. Basically, Fergie told David Moyes, you're the next manager of Manchester United, no matter what you say. And that was a disaster. Because the same possible thing could happen to us if we don't get things right. If we don't pick the right person. Because who knows, Steve Bold could be the right person. We just don't know. I just don't know, because I don't know anything about him other than he's a former player and he sits next to Arsene. That's about it. But he could be the right person, but we don't know. Arsenal says they're preparing themselves for when Arsene does leave, when he does retire as manager. But if you're thinking, I kind of covered this on another episode, a few episodes back, of saying possible replacements for Arsene Wenger. And the one guy that just screams Arsenal, that screams, I know what your legacy is, Arsene. I know what type of football you love to play. The one touch, uh, is Dennis Bergkamp. After his unveiling of his statue last year, I mean, Dennis Bergkamp, he's not the most like charismatic guy in the world. He's, you could say he's the shy guy in a room. He's not the one that's going to be all rah rah and uh, you know, compare his goal celebrations to a Thierry Henry, and it's kind of like night and day, to where Thierry Henry is like, look at me, to where Dennis Bergkamp was, oh no, look at my teammates before me. That's just the type of guy he is. But for him to come out and say, at his unveiling last year of his statue, saying that he wants to return to Arsenal, to be a coach, and then possibly become the manager one day. Those are some huge words coming from a former player of his stature. I mean, you look at anybody's top 10, top 5 Arsenal players of all time, and nine times out of 10, Dennis Bergkamp is number one. And one of the reasons is because he retired with the club. He brought the club up like with Arsenal, with Arsene. They both together took Arsenal to heights that had never seen before, to where Arsenal became a dominant power in the world of football, where it became one of the biggest clubs in the world, where it became a destination place for world-class players to come to. And for him to come out and say, yeah, I would like to be a coach or even a manager, I was, after he said those words, I thought for sure this summer he's coming in as a coach, and that he's going to be the heir apparent. He's going to be the guy that's going to be taken over after Arsene leaves. Because it would make all the sense in the world to me. Because can you really pick out another more intelligent player when he was on the pitch than Dennis Bergkamp? I mean, you add in his skill and his technique, and I mean, he was just one of the world's best ever. But you add in his intelligence and how smart he was. I mean, he was 10 times smarter than anybody else on the pitch. I mean, Thierry Henry should be thanking Dennis Bergkamp for the rest of his life, because I think without Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry would probably be still a great player, but without Dennis Bergkamp behind him, feeding him the ball and being smart about everything, I don't know if Thierry Henry would have been Thierry Henry that we think about him now. But that would make all the sense in the world, from going from Arsene Wenger to a Dennis Bergkamp. I think he's currently like 45, 46 years old. He still kind of has that mentality. I mean, he's currently a assistant manager at Ajax, which is a great start for somewhere to start out at. Ajax is kind of like a feeder club now, to where they can't afford like the big money signings. They can't afford the big wages, but as far as teaching the game and being a manager, and setting up their players to succeed, and it's a great start from somewhere. So I was kind of shocked after this summer that he wasn't brought in as some type of coach, whether he was coaching like the midfield or even the strikers. Even Thierry Henry has even said, I mean, he's still playing, and he said he would love to be the manager at Arsenal someday. But with Dennis Bergkamp, I mean, why not bring him in? Why not have him be the heir apparent? I mean, is Arsene Wenger maybe scared, possibly, that what if Dennis Bergkamp fails? Will that diminish his legacy here at the club? I don't think it would. I think you can separate the two for sure from being player to manager. I mean, everybody else has. I mean, you can look at all the managers now. They were former players pretty much at one point or another. I mean, you can't really find a manager these days that's between the ages of 50 and 60 or 45 and 60 that wasn't a former player. So if Dennis Bergkamp is saying this type of things, if he wants to come to the club, if obviously he wants to come back, why not bring him in? Why not usher him in? Why not teach him everything that's going on with the club and have him be the heir apparent? I know Steve Bold was a player during for the first 2 or 3 years when Arsene was here, but you know does he know that Arsenal way? Is Steve Bold even going to keep the one touch style of play that we're accustomed to? You just don't know that. I would think that Dennis Bergkamp would keep that for sure. Because not only is that the best football, that's the most exciting football to watch. And of course, we want to keep that here at Arsenal. We don't want to, I don't think we want to go back to that more of a direct cut type of play because, being direct and crossing the ball in every single time it's kind of boring. It doesn't always win unless you're Real Madrid and you have a world-class player at every single position, which we don't have. Obviously we don't have the type of money that to burn like a Real Madrid or a Barcelona or like a Chelsea or Manchester City. We're trying to do everything by the book, by the FFP. So when people are saying these things of Wenger out, let's force him out. I hope he resigns after this year. I hope he just leaves after this year. I mean, you really have to take a step back and really think about what you're saying. Because as far as I'm concerned, like I said, I'm scared shitless of what's going to be coming. Because we saw firsthand what happened to Manchester United. And I don't care if they find some type of rhythm or not. I don't think there's any way that they finish top four this year. Not with that back line, not with that midfield. I mean, Louis van Gaal is, one of the better managers in the world, and he can't even find a balance. He can't find what players work with each other well. And he has players like, of course, Wayne Rooney's been out for the last couple of games, but he has Juan Mata, who's which is hilarious. That guy never gets mentioned. Ozil gets taken to the ringer just about every single fucking weekend as being a bust or a failure, just because he doesn't have like 2 assists a game. But you look at Juan Mata, and he cost 37 million pounds, and he was supposed to be Manchester United's messiah. I think they got him when they were 6th in the table and they finished 7th. Why hasn't he been talked about? Why hasn't he been taken a ringer? Of course, I'm sure Manchester United fans talk about him all the time, but among other fans and among other like talk shows and stuff, his name's never really mentioned. And then you had a guy like Falcao, RVP, and all these other guys, and I just don't see it. But again, you add all that talent together, and Di Maria as well. You look at all that talent, it's like, wow, how can they be so shit? And again, it's this transitional period between managers from the way Fergie ran things to David Moyes and now Louis van Gaal. Each manager does it the way they want to. They're so egotistical that they run things the way they want them run. To where anything that the previous manager was doing goes right out the fucking door. Because they want to do things their way. They don't want to have a legacy hanging over them. They want to be credited for them doing what they're doing. So this transitional period from when Arsene does leave, it's going to be scary. It's going to be, I think honestly, it's going to take a year or two after Arsene Wenger leaves to for some of those fans that keep on saying Wenger out, or we should get some new blood in, into the manager seat, to really appreciate everything that he's done for the club, and what he had to go through, especially through those like 6, 7, 8 years, uh, to really appreciate what he did for us, because we don't know what the future holds. Again, it's easy for us to say, let's get him out, let's bring in some new blood, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, is that what we really want? Do we want to be Manchester United, what they're dealing with now? I mean, look at you can even look at a Monaco and Ligue 1. They were, a new Russian owner came in and says, you know what, I'm going to spend a shit ton of money and I'm just going to turn this into a world class club. He ended up selling all of his world class players because he found out real quick that it just doesn't work that way, especially with FFP. It changes the whole game plan. Right now, Arsenal has set themselves up pretty well for FFP, that they never really have to worry about it, to be honest with you. But again, on this Arsene Wenger stuff, you really have to start thinking, what's the best thing for this club? What's is someone bringing in someone new going to really rejuvenate the club as a whole, or whatever? But then if you want that, and if it all goes sour, and it all goes downhill to where we go from a top four club in the BPL to a mid table club, then of course those people would be saying, well, get this fucking guy out, let's bring in somebody else. It's just going to be a continuous, uh, you know, ring around the rosy type thing. But let me know in your comments, who would you bring in? Is Klopp like the only answer? Would he be the only answer? I know last year a lot of people were saying Roberto Martinez, to possibly bring him in because he has kind of like that same possession style, one-touch football kind of that he's trying to implement at Everton. Is he a possibility? Because I don't see any of the other top managers leaving their clubs. Uh, Pep Guardiola would probably be a name that's kind of has that Barcelona style, one-touch, heavy possession style of football. But why would he leave Bayern Munich? You know, who's a real viable option? Because there's not many of them. So let me know in the comments down below, and see what you think. See what if you really think about it, if you really take a step back and try to be uh, almost unbiased about it. Uh, would you really fire Arsene Wenger? Who would you bring in? Uh, you know, what would happen if it didn't even work? What if we ended up like Manchester United? Because I definitely don't want to end up like that. Do you think that Steve Bull is the answer? Do you think he's the heir apparent? Um, who knows? Sometimes you think about the future. Sometimes you don't want to think about the future. And sometimes the future kind of scares the shit out of you, especially when it comes to Arsenal, something that we all love, and a club that we all love, and a club that we want to see flourish and become one of the best clubs in the world, as winning Champions League, winning the league all the time, stuff like that. But yeah, leave your comments and tell me what you think. But that'll be it. Later.